The expectation is if we're going to do it, we're going to do it with every intent to be the very best at it.
Welcome back to The Deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Alex Rodriguez. So excited to have with us as our guest today, Greg Olsen. He is, of course, an Emmy-winning sports broadcaster, former professional football player, and the creator of Youth Inc. We're going to talk about all of it today. Greg, really good to see you.
Great to see you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, so let's talk about some shared experiences here between you and Alex Rodriguez, sitting here next to me in New York City. The transition from being a player to being a broadcaster is a key moment for anybody. You got to it pretty early, like even while you were still playing, you were starting to dabble in it a bit. Why? What made you want to sort of be on TV and be behind a mic?
Yeah, so if you would have asked me, 4 or 5 years into my playing career, what I was going to do after I was done playing, I would have said, I have no idea. I'm going to play until the wheels fall off and I'll figure it out. But I had some really unique opportunities that came my way. And like everybody knows, life's about it, an element of luck and an element of opportunities. And then what you make of them kind of dictates where those paths ultimately lead. And so 2015, Fox actually was nice enough. Both Kevin Burkhardt, who's Alex's partner, obviously with the pregame show and the great job they do there at Fox, who was my first partner at Fox. We go way back to North Jersey together. We grew up. I've known Kevin for a long time, since I was in high school. So Kevin actually, so Kevin did a audition for me. So anyone who's been to one of these auditions, you sit in a sterile studio out in LA at the Fox studios, and you just call a game off of a television monitor. And it's as simple as that. So I was lucky enough that Fox asked me to do a dry run game with Kevin. And then in 2017 on the bye week of my 2017 season, I joined Kevin, and his partner at the time was Charles Davis, and we did a 3-man booth. And then in 2019, Fox had me back again, and I did a 2-man booth on my bye week. So I did all of this as a current player, and it just gave me such an opportunity to really see what I liked. And I had done some studio and I had done some game stuff. I did college, I did NFL, but it was really stepping into an NFL booth and a real live game back in 17, where I walked away from the stadium saying, like, I could do this. Like, I feel really good about this. This might be my niche. And I did it. I called XFL games. People always say, oh man, in 2 years you called the Super Bowl. Well, how did you rise so fast? I was like, well, you just didn't know any of the games I did before. like anything, right? These overnight successes take a long time to get there. So I was very fortunate, the opportunities I was giving during my playing career, and it just kind of organically found me as much as I found it. And I've loved doing it ever since.
Greg, I'm kind of spooked right now because, first of all, my partner, Jason, who is the best, he did forget to mention the greatest thing about you is you're a University of Miami alum, right? And I sat at that board for 20 years and, really had an incredible time watching you and your excellence there. So thank you for your service. But in 2015, it's ironic you mentioned that. That was exactly the same year that Fox was generous enough to talk to me. And I came back that year for my suspension, which was a vital year for me to get back on track. I ended up having a really nice year and, getting my career back on track a little bit. And I went on an off day once they signed me to say, okay, can you do the playoffs once you guys get eliminated? And I agreed to that. And then we had a day off. And I went into the Fox studio in Century City in LA. And I sat there for like 2.5 hours. And we did a mock pregame show. And I was I remember my knees were shaking. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm used to playing in Yankee Stadium in front of 55,000 people at the old stadium. And I'm nervous about this. But Kevin, I call him Magic Johnson. He's a little bit like Jason. He's an ultimate giver. He sets you up to win. I'm interested to know, because we share in Kevin and we both love him so much, what is it about him that made you feel better? I mean, you won an Emmy with him, but what makes him such a great leader and a great broadcast partner?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because I think all of us, yourself, me, I'm sure Tom Brady would now say it, like everyone who's ever worked with Kevin, the first thing they say is like, it's just easy. like everything he does is easy. He takes you exactly where you want to go. He keeps you out of maybe where you don't want to go. And I think your Magic Johnson, he is the ultimate point guard. He's the ultimate kind of weave in and out, do all the hard work. And then his ultimate goal and what he does so well is he just makes whoever's sitting next to him, whether it's on the desk with you and Big Poppy and Jeter, or whether it's sitting in the booth with, the different guys he's worked with in the NFL, whoever works with him, he makes them always look awesome. And he makes them always look great. And it's the greatest compliment that you could pay a guy. He has no ego. He is selfless as the day is long. And it's the best teammate to have, especially for guys like us who you might know baseball and I might know football, but we don't know TV. In the early days, at least I didn't really know TV. And in a lot of ways now, Alex, I don't know how you feel about it, but like there's still elements of TV that I really still don't get. But like when your partner is just so good at managing and directing traffic and managing all of the technical stuff, and you can just do what you do well, which is talk the game and provide insight and analysis, it just makes everything work so smoothly. But yeah, I could go on. We could do this entire segment about Kevin and now my partner Joe Davis, who's also on your guys' World Series and postseason crew. Our team at Fox, as it is for the baseball crew, equally for the NFL crew, is just a really good collection of really talented people who can make the analyst job look a lot better than we probably are.
To that exact point, Greg, like, what is the thing that you feel like you had to learn the most? Because I know from working alongside this guy, it's like you guys, if there's one thing about professional athletes and former professional athletes, you guys are grinders, you're coachable, you like to learn, you like to get better. What was the thing you had to get better at that you have sort of accomplished in these intervening years?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, and I don't even know if I've necessarily completely gotten over it or completely fixed all the problems, but I think one of the challenges that a lot of guys have that have played the game, and I'm sure for Alex to sit there when he watches a Major League Baseball game, Alex can probably find 25 things on any given at bat or any given pitch sequence or any different defensive rotation in the field. And he could probably talk 25 minutes about why it's so important and why he finds it so interesting. And it would be great television. But we don't have these unlimited boxes of time. We have to talk in these very clear-cut, succinct, especially doing an NFL broadcast where we're talking between plays in 20, 30-second intervals. So I think early on for me, it was just because I see 5 things that I might find interesting and I want to bring the viewer in on, I probably only have time to make a case for one of those interesting things, but I have a 3-hour broadcast to come back to some of the others. I think early on, I wanted to tell everybody everything I saw on every play because I'm fascinated by it. I love it. I find it the most interesting, thing in the world, but it doesn't always make for great television. So I think that's something I'm still working through, where less is more. See a little, see a lot, like all of those phrases we used to have as athletes to simplify things. I think we can lean on a lot of those now in the broadcasting, in live television, where you when you go too long is often when you get yourself in trouble. And that's been something that I've had to continue to remind myself as I've done this now the last couple of years.
So, Greg, I want to dig in there a little bit because that's a great answer. And I'm really wondering, you go to 2015 and now you cut to 2025 and you're a completely different broadcaster. Like Jason said, you've won an Emmy, you've covered a Super Bowl. Like, you're one of the most respected guys in the industry. But talk to me about 2015, 2016. What were a couple things besides the one you just articulated, things you were doing probably wrong that today it'll be a big no-no, that today you do more naturally?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think a lot of the things would probably be what doesn't come on air, aside from just being more succinct and more clear and have better clarity and conversational is probably the best way, like that to phrase it, that you and your partner just come across like you're two guys sitting on the couch having a beer together and just talking ball. Like that's what everyone wants from a viewer's perspective. I think when I look back on those early years where I had a lot of trouble, maybe not trouble, but had a learning curve, was managing the picture of what we were seeing. For example, we want to do a replay after a scoring touchdown, right? And I want to talk about, before we get to the ball and the throw and the catch, I want to make sure we spend some time, because the running back and the offensive line did a really nice job picking up a really elaborate blitz scheme that gave the quarterback time. Mahomes has time now to throw a touchdown to Kelsey. Instead of just diving in and just saying, great throw, Mahomes, great catch, Kelsey, I wanted to be able to steer the truck to say, hey, I want the sky cam behind the quarterback, start on a freeze, because I want to draw up the thing. I had a hard time in real time getting that across. I knew what I wanted. It was hard for me to speak television, that the people in the truck knew that they could put on the screen what I saw in my brain. And now it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, I want an ISO, bottom of the screen, Kelsey, start on pause. Everyone knows what I want. Hey, I want behind the defense, pit frame, start on pause, because I want to talk about the defensive tackle, whoever it is. Like, I can now have a little bit quicker and clearer way to direct the truck so that they set up a picture that is in line with what I'm really excited to talk about. But I think, like anything else, like, it takes a little time to get comfortable enough to say, hey, you guys in the truck that have been doing this a really long time, I want this picture, and I promise you, like, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
I think early on, you're a little hesitant and you're a little nervous. You're saying, whatever you put up, I'll talk about. So as anything, there's been a little bit of an evolution where I'm a little bit more assertive and saying, no, I feel really strongly I want to go this direction. And to the credit of my producers and directors, and Macheska, he produces the World Series with you guys. Like, again, I've been lucky that the producers and directors that I had have trusted that growth and are just really good at their job.
Yeah. And, one thing that obviously you've talked a lot about, Greg, and I have to give you credit for talking as much and as openly as you have, is, getting a new partner, essentially being, replaced by Tom Brady, which, is tough on one hand and also very understandable given the Tom Brady-ness of it all. I don't want to make you sort of relive and say a lot of the things that you've said before, but it does strike me that a lot of people listening, this is a business audience. Many people have encountered that exact same thing where, like, someone else, comes in, new guy coming into the company, new man or woman, coming onto the team. What's your advice for somebody having now gone through this who faces something similar, because you've handled it with a lot of grace, with a lot of confidence? How did you sort of get there, and what would you say to people is the best way to handle something like that?
I think in a lot of ways through this transition, a lot of the lessons that I've tried to learn on the fly in a new industry have just been leaning on things that served me well in my former life, which was as an athlete. And anyone who's lived in a competitive environment, and obviously Alex can speak to this as good as anybody in history of sports, like, when you compete at a high level, you have high expectations, and the expectations of you, there's only so many people that have ever reached that level, right? And I certainly, from a playing career, didn't. But when it came to this new chapter in my life, so many of the things of my former career paid dividends, and this was one of them. And I think the biggest lesson, what I would say to people is, there's nothing wrong with being incredibly competitive. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best player on the New York Yankees. But that doesn't mean that Derek Jeter has to go over. That doesn't mean that the other players on your team can't have a lot of success. So, like, that was my career as a player. Like, every year there were guys drafted to take my position, and there were guys on the offensive side of the ball who competed for targets and catches and yards and all of that. And my success did not have to mean their failure, and their success didn't have to mean I couldn't be really good either. And so I approached this world of TV in really the same fashion. Like, my expectations are to be amongst the best people in the industry, and whatever game that is, there's a lot of moving parts outside of your control. But what I control is I control how hard I prepare. I control how much I know about the sport of football. And I genuinely enjoy doing it. And if there's someone else who comes along who also is good, great. There's plenty of room for all of us. And that's really just been my approach. And with Tom, like, I want Tom to do a great job. I want Tom to have success. I root for Tom and Kevin. Like, they're my friends. Like, they're people, they're my colleagues, they're my friends. I want them to have success. but I still want to be regarded as being the best in the industry. And that's not a knock on anyone else. It's just the only way I know. I'm sure no one knows it better than Alex. Like, the expectations for a long time are that Alex is the best baseball player in Major League Baseball. And then all of a sudden you go line up next to Derek Jeter, who's an icon in New York City. That doesn't mean that Alex Rodriguez can't still be the best baseball player in the world. Like, it's a very similar world where you say, I can be really good regardless of the people around me being good or bad.
Yeah, I love that, Greg. And look, when you have a career like you've had, where it includes, doing some of the biggest games in the NFL, it includes an Emmy, and the principal brings you into the office, it's usually going to be like, hey, we're going to double your pay, and you're going to be in the A team forever. And instead, you get the opposite. So I've often said that you can't control what happens to you, but you certainly can control how you react to those circumstances and those decisions. What made you reach that mindset?
And this is something that people probably think I'm a little crazy when we're coaching our kids' teams and we're coaching football. And, I coach my son's travel baseball team. Alex and I have talked a lot of youth baseball in our pastimes, crossing paths over the years. I'm just a big believer. Like, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Like, if we're going to spend all this time and energy, like, I just don't have a lot of understanding and patience for just participating
Yeah.
and just being content to have the position. I've always been of the mindset where I might not always be the best. I certainly was never the best football player my entire life. I was never the best NFL football player. At no time in my life was I ever the best player on my team. In college, maybe in high school, but in college and NFL, certainly, I was never the best player on my team. But I was always the best player I could possibly be. There was nothing more for me to do. If someone was better than me, they were just better than me. It's the same thing now in the broadcast role. Whatever you label us as, the 2 crew, the B crew, the 1 crew, the C, whatever it is, if I'm going to do it and I'm going to spend all week and I'm going to travel the weekends and we're going to meet with these teams, like, the expectation is, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it with every intent to be the very best at it. And that doesn't guarantee you will be the best, and it doesn't guarantee you are perceived as the best, but that is just the intent going forward with everything you do in your preparation, your perform, and all of that. And then the dust can settle from there. And like I said, my approach as a player and all the lessons that I learned to kind of punch above my weight class as a player against better athletes, bigger, stronger guys that I competed with, I try to bring a lot of those same principles and approaches to now my time on television.
You gave us a great segue into the youth sports business. You are announcing, or have recently announced, a new venture called You Think. For those watching on video and YouTube, you've got some sick merch that you're wearing right now that demonstrates that. Alex and I are both fascinated by this business, having, played as kids, being parents and having our kids play. What brought you to the point that you wanted to go beyond coaching your kids to really building a business around this?
Yeah, so it's just been kind of the story of my life. I grew up in North Jersey. My dad was the local public high school football coach for 40 years. He coached me and all my brothers. It was stereotypical local high school football, very intense, very driven, high expectations. Again, my 2 brothers and I, all 3 went on to play major Division I football as a product because of that early accessibility towards camps and coaching and leadership and all of those qualities we learned at a young age growing up playing through my dad. And then obviously I made a career out of it and now have come full circle where I'm the dad and I'm raising 2 teenage boys and a teenage girl, and they're all in their varying sports and levels of interest and whatnot. And I find myself now coaching those middle school teams and those girls basketball teams, and I'm coaching travel baseball and trying to understand, okay, how do we best navigate this, not only for my own kids, but for the kids that we take responsibility for as the coach, as members of our team. And we'd lay in bed at night with my wife and I'd be like, I'm not sure if we're doing this right. Like, I'm not sure if we have, if we have it right, does the world have it right? Like, there has to be a conversation out there towards getting these families best practices to navigating what is a very different youth sports scene than what Alex and I grew up in. Like, it is unrecognizable from 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that was the content piece of You Think. And we're having, Alex and I, through our friends at Fox, are actually going to sit down and have a conversation. Alex has been nice enough to agree to that and just talk about best practices, best experiences. Tom Brady was our launch episode, and we have Malcolm Gladwell, who's one of the greatest thought leaders in the entire world, sociologist and psychologist. and different practices. We have a really wide berth of different interview guests, as well as other people creating content on our platform to entertain, to inform, and to empower people to have a better experience in youth sports. And then the back real engine of the company is a commerce platform trying to give people better experiences to represent their son or daughter's youth football. For us to buy a Dallas Cowboy or a Carolina Panther hoodie or a t-shirt is as simple as going to Fanatics, you type it in and it drops. Why can't we do that for the youth sports scene? Why can't you wear that polo you have and it has your son or daughter's high school logo on it that you would wear to go play golf or you'd wear to go play lunch? We're creating that ecosystem of the commerce on the heels of acquiring our customers and bringing our consumers in through a lot of our content pieces.
It's so interesting too. So I have a son who I went through it from a lacrosse perspective. So my son played, club lacrosse all through, ended up playing in college. And so like the massive ecosystem around youth sports, it's beyond, by some measures, $40 billion market, but it is broken up as much as anything else. We've had David Blitzer, Josh Harris on this show. They obviously have their own take on this through Unrivaled, which I know you're deeply familiar with. How does this business for you grow? And is this something that consolidates with other companies? I know you're literally just launching it, but I know you've thought about these things. Like, take us inside the business plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the long-term strategy. Again, we are literally on like week one of this launch, but it's been a 2-year journey to get to this point. You mentioned the Unrivaled guys. I actually just sat down with them up in Cooperstown. They obviously own Cooperstown All-Star Village. They're a partner and a sponsor and are continuing to do more and more things with us at You Think. And obviously the projects that they're doing with Cal Ripken baseball and the Cooperstown trip that we just took my 12-year-old son's team to a couple weeks ago. So that we align in a lot of similar kind of circles of those guys on Unrivaled that you just mentioned. But I think big picture for us, if we had to kind of just summarize what we're trying to do, is we're trying to improve the experience of everyone involved in youth sports. And there's a lot of ways to do that, right? So there's the educational component. There's teaching coaches and players best practices of running, everything from Alex Rodriguez telling us, how to hit a curveball to Ryan Day, on the heels of a national champion telling us, how do you get back into the lab after having an incredible season? What does off-season strategy look like? How do you build a coaching staff? How do you recruit in today's NIL day? Tom Brady and all these people giving very unique perspectives to both inform and empower. But then there's also an entertainment property. We have a lot of really fun, content, series that are coming down the pipeline that'll be more in the age of what everyone's sons are kind of watching on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and whatnot that we're excited about. The commerce piece is the improving of experience of, I want to represent my son or daughter's team. And what I wear on a Friday night to a football game or a Saturday morning on a baseball field is a very different experience getting that pullover, that t-shirt, those pair of shorts than what it would be for the University of Miami or the Minnesota Timberwolves or whoever it is. It's a very different experience. And we took a step back and we said, okay, the infrastructure of that experience is very ingrained in people and what they're used to in their daily activity. Why don't we just take those and apply it into the youth sports sense? So now you can wear your favorite team, because for a lot of these parents, and you guys know this, their favorite team is whatever team their kid is playing for.
100%.
That's on the weekends. That's what they're living for. So it seems like a real hole in the market that we feel like we can attack and go after. And we feel pretty good about the team we've put in place, the experience of a lot of our founders and a lot of the people we've brought on board, that we can execute the content element and the commerce side, and we can do it jointly. And obviously the expectation is that we can make a dent in this market.
I have a bone to pick with especially like youth baseball. And maybe you can help me address this.
Let's talk youth baseball.
Please.
Because I live youth baseball every day of my life.
But I'm so sick of it, honestly. And I'll tell you why. I come from a mother who used to, single mother. She was a secretary in the morning, served tables at night, worked 15, 16, 17-hour days, would leave at 7 in the morning and come home sometimes at midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. But I have so many of my friends, Greg, today that say, Alex, if you were a kid today, if you were 10 years old, Alex Rodriguez would never make it to the big leagues. And I would say, why? Well, because you and your mother couldn't afford it. And the same parents are selling their cars. They're having a double mortgage in their homes to be traveling around this perfect game stuff and all this nonsense. You have to make sports more affordable, and it just drives me crazy.
You're 100% right. And listen, I live this every single day. I've coached both my boys' teams. I now just coach my 12U team. We just spent a week in Cooperstown. I wrote a check for $30,000 to bring 13 boys to
Wow.
Cooperstown, New York for an entire week.
Whoa.
My team from the beginning, again, different, everybody, different. To play on my team, you pay me $0. We provide your uniforms. We provide the only thing you got. Alex Rodriguez, you're on my team. I got a spot for you if you got some eligibility.
I could afford to play on your team then, as I was.
You could. I think you could afford. Yes, I think you could afford my team. You could probably buy our league. But all that being said, like, you got to get yourself a bat and a glove and a pair of cleats, and we'll take care of everything else. And tournament entry fees. We'll take care of everything else that comes along with it. Like, sports to me costs me money. Now, I understand for a lot of these organizations, for a lot of these coaches, this is their full-time job, right? There is a professionalization of youth sports. There are professional youth sports coaches. Their only job in the world is to coach young athletes, both privately, and they get paid to coach their team. And I don't fault anybody for it. There's a lot of really passionate people that spend their entire day in the world of developing young athletes, especially in baseball. But everything you said about the cost that comes with it is 100% the truth. There are kids at 12 years old that are paying $3,000 to $5,000 a year to play on one team. They could show up to that team and have 3 new players come from Miami, Florida, be given a uniform and take their spot, paying nothing. But they've also flown to Atlanta. They've flown to Texas. They've flown to wherever the tournament is. They've stayed in hotels. They've rented cars, plus the $5,000 to play on their team. It is a never-ending cost that if you want to participate in the junior showcase, there's an element of cost that is a barrier to entry. And I don't sit here pretending to know what the fix is to that. I like anything, I feel like once that ball starts rolling downhill, it's very hard to push it back up. There is a lot of money to make off the development of young athletes.
Yeah.
And I try not to be critical because I know there are a lot of people that are doing it for the right reasons. But there are a lot of people that are just running business off of the idea of coaching and whatnot. And it's just not the world that I come from. We're coaching our kids' middle school football team. I'm from the world of youth coaches being volunteers. Those days are becoming very few and far between, Alex. And someone with your voice in the space, someone with your, credibility, your success, obviously probably has a ton of way to maybe to sway that pendulum back the other way. But baseball, of all the sports that we're in, baseball has probably gone the furthest towards specialization, professionalization, high cost of entry, and very, very serious and competitive at the earliest of ages.
Greg, my first year, I'm going to date myself here. I was a rookie at 18 years old for the Seattle Mariners, playing with the GOAT, Ken Griffey Jr., the great manager, Lou Piniella, Randy Johnson, Edgar Martinez, Hall of Famers galore all around. And at that point, there was about 20 to 25% of the league was African-American. And today is under 5%. And if you poll, and I was guessed because I don't have this data, but if you go to inner cities, some of our greatest athletes in the world are picking football, basketball, and soccer and, other sports because they truly just can't afford it. And I bet you 80% of them, if you polled them, they just say, we just can't afford to try baseball, so we're going to go try something else. And that's a problem. And for Major League Baseball, at the macro level, how do you grow the TAM of baseball? Is you got to have the greatest athletes playing the sport. And thank God there's one great example that plays right here in New York City. His name is Aaron Judge, who was recruited by Notre Dame, Stanford to be a tight end. And thank God for us and all of us who love baseball, he chose baseball. But I guarantee you 9 out of 10 are going to go to Notre Dame or Stanford to play football.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a great example of a kid who maybe nowadays growing up, he might be forced to only play football, or he might be forced to only play baseball, and he doesn't have those, those experiences as a high school player. And of course, it's worked out for him. He's an MLB All-Star and an MVP. But there's a lot of kids who the best time of their sports career might be their senior year in high school, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone playing sports. If the idea of playing baseball as a young kid, if my kids, only reason my 2 boys played baseball, and they're going to be in 7th and 8th grade. If their only reason for playing baseball was to grow up to be Alex Rodriguez, we should stop playing baseball.
Right.
The odds of that happening are zero. I don't even know that the long shot of that happening is close to zero. But there's so many other experiences that come just from being on the team, competing in high school. Some of your best core memories are playing at a young age as a young kid growing up with your buddies in the neighborhood. And I think so often that is lost, where for so many people, the only objective of playing youth sports is to either get a college scholarship or to become a professional. I'm not saying those aren't worthwhile aspirations and that those aren't great goals, but I think if we keep them as the only driving forces, we're missing so many of the amazing other lessons in life, things that we can carry forward into our marriages, into our parenting style, into the ability to work with different people from different backgrounds in the workplace. Like, there's so many other aspects of sport that teach people how to live in society more than just the ability to make a living doing it.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And again, having lived this from a parent's perspective, when you actually start to do the math, even, and Greg, you'll appreciate this, especially as your boys get older. The idea of like what you're spending, and then in pursuit of a college scholarship, like the math doesn't even add up. If you're spending, like $5,000-$10,000, it's like, no, maybe if what you're really trying to do is pay for college, then like put that money in a 529.
Yeah.
But if you go into it, and not to be too preachy about this, but like we said to our son through all of high school, it's like, listen, you are in this for so many other reasons than playing in college or getting a college scholarship. And we were very clear with him. It's like, if you wake up tomorrow, and say like, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, all of it was worth it because of the exactly what you're saying, because of the experience you had, making these friends, learning how to set goals, learning how to succeed, learning how to fail, win, lose, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and then it's funny, and when you go into it with the right driving forces at the start, and you're not going into it to win as many games as you can and to get a college scholarship, but you go into it, especially from a coaching perspective, and you can say, let's create a space of development, of accountability, of growth, of like really strong program rules and alignment. It's amazing how the goals that everyone wants, you end up at a lot of times, a lot of the kids reach them, but it's a byproduct of everything else. Not everyone's going to go play college baseball, but everyone's going to get all the great lessons. And then 10% of them are going to go play college baseball. Like at our kids' school here in Charlotte, we have a really good baseball program. We have a really good football program too. But our baseball program has a bunch of really young, talented kids in the program. Small school, but just very, very good. Like in this last class, we're sending kids to NC State. Our pitcher went to Wake Forest. Our shortstop got drafted into the 5th round last year to the Orioles. We got some young kids that'll be like high level, either draft picks or college Power 5 kids. But it's because it's a program. They're playing with their buddies. They've gone to school here since they were in middle school. Like there's an element of growth in saying, all right, I might want to wait my turn till I'm a sophomore or junior to play, but it'll all be worth it. Like we are speeding up the process of development so fast these days that we're skipping over so many steps. And if you don't become Alex Rodriguez or you don't get a college scholarship, for everybody else, which is the vast majority, don't fit into that bucket, you look back and say, I didn't get anything else either. Like I missed all the other stuff that at least that's what's going on right now. And it's just getting younger and younger.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Listen, I could talk about this the rest of the day, and then we could get into NIL and college and all that. But unfortunately, we have to wrap up. But before we do, we're going to do our lightning round. 5 questions. Just first thing that jumps to your mind.
Got it.
I'll start, and then Alex will pick up. All right, here we go. Best piece of advice you've received on deal making or business?
Have a strong understanding of what you don't know. Like surround yourself with people who know a lot more than you, and you're probably going to be in good shape. If you're the smartest guy in the room,
that's a problem.
Maybe for me, it's a problem.
Who's your dream deal making partner?
I mean, along the lines of what we're doing right now with You Think, like a guy like Michael Rubin, right? I mean, what they've built at Fanatics, understanding commerce, and I think he's brilliant in a lot of ways, but I have a lot of respect for what he's built.
Yeah, what a hustler. Which team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
I'd like to see Miami Hurricanes. Hopefully Alex feels me there.
Big time.
I'll take it in anything. I'll take it in baseball, basketball, girls basketball. football, I'll take it in any. But yeah, I'd like to see Miami get back to being what we all remember.
Yeah, let's keep it to football, and we have a big game on opener against Notre Dame.
That's gonna be
question
fun.
number 4 here. What is your hype song before a big meeting or negotiation?
So I'm a big King. I know you guys know Kings of Leon.
Of course.
I just saw him play in New York a couple weeks ago with Zach Bryan. There's a song there called Fans. Fans.
All right.
And it's just about check it out. It's a really good
Love
song.
King of Leon.
All right, that's good. All right, last question. What's your advice for someone listening who wants a career like yours?
The best thing that I've done in my career is I've always just continued the art of learning and the art of curiosity and the art of getting better. I don't know if at any stagnant point in time I was ever the best person at any given frozen moment. I think my strength had been I never stopped getting better for a really long period of time. And when we stopped at the end and I looked around, a lot of people who were better than me early on, I had passed by a long time ago. So I think that the ability to improve indefinitely has always been a strength of mine.
That's great. This was super, super fun. We could literally do this all day. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you
Thanks,
guys.
Greg. That was awesome.